We're both in the political milieu, right? I've been doing the sci-fi stuff, and I'm still doing the political stuff as well. I'm still doing political comedy, but the sci-fi stuff I love because I like science fiction in and of itself. But it's also very important to me that I have some creative outlet that does not force me to exist in a matrix that's us versus them.
Right.
When I'm hanging out, like, no one ever, I've never called anybody and gone, well, you want to come on my sci-fi podcast? And they go, I don't know, I heard that you're pretty friendly with TOS people. I know you're not TOS, but you are TOS adjacent, and I'm Deep Space Nine. No one ever does that, right? And no one's like, well, I can't.
Well, there is a subreddit for that, by the way.
There are a few people, but I haven't brought them on yet. And no one's worried about me, like, normalizing Battlestar Galactica or anything like that. So the sci-fi is this just wonderful reprieve. And if you ever are getting down, I think you've got a thicker skin than I do, and I'm envious of that. But if you go on Twitter and you just jump into the sci-fi stuff, it's all these wonderful strangers from across the globe that just want to revel in how wonderful science fiction is and have these awesome conversations.
Oddly, I feed on the hate. It seems like the more angry people
you
get
must
at
be
me.
very strong right now. Then this might be the Matt Kibbe origin story if you could feed on the hate.
It improves my mood just to read some of the more ridiculous attacks that you inevitably get whenever you express an opinion about anything.
Yeah.
Maybe even sci-fi, but let's. I mean, you tease these, but let's talk about the two podcasts that you're doing right now because anybody watching this show absolutely needs to be a subscriber to these things.
I agree. Thank you, Matt.
I thought you might buy that.
Well, I'll begin with the science fiction one. I recently launched a podcast called Alienating the Audience, and that is a deep dive on science fiction. Occasionally politics wanders into it, but it's not the thrust of it. What I really like doing is I really enjoy exploring the deep themes and constructs and mindset of science fiction. So I did an episode with Tim Sandifer, who we both know, where we're really getting into the mind of Rod Serling, and we're talking about what's motivating the Twilight Zone. What is it? Collectivism? Is it a fear of totalitarianism? Is it nostalgia? What's going on there? What's the world that Rod Serling's trying to show us? I'm about to drop this week a one on Robert Heinlein, which also has all sorts of ideological concepts that are in there. So I really enjoy doing the deep dive, and I'm finding that the people that like the podcast tend to be very hardcore science fiction fans. They're also pretty intense abstract thinkers and like getting into the deep underlying stuff. So that's alienating the audience for the sci-fi nerds.
There does say, and certainly Heinlein and others, Dick. There's definitely a libertarian ethos and
definitely Heinlein.
Not so much ideology, but just that sense of individualism and.
Well, Heinlein for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, Heinlein, like there are exceptions, like Starship Troopers is frequently portrayed as a fascist work, but I mean, my read on it is I think if you're writing a book set in a fascist universe, it doesn't necessarily mean you're a fascist.
Right.
I think overall Heinlein is a very, very, very much an individualist. I'd say he's a very horny individualist, since every book by Heinlein I've ever read involves a very attractive female protagonist explaining why she's desperately in love with you, but understands that you need to have sex with other people. There's always that moment.
Well, in fairness, Ayn Rand was a fairly horny individualist as well.
Yeah.